Well, let's just get started. Ready? Okay, hi, I'm Mary Ann, and I'm here to teach you stuff about governance. I have a program, and this is about, as much about me giving you content, it's about you really understanding what you want out of this whole experience. Breakthroughs happen in a day, transformation happens over time, and the beauty of what we have done here is giving you the opportunity for breakthroughs and then continued coaching and a transformation. So what we're going to do today is give you some content, get you stimulating your thinking so that we can focus what you would like to have happen as we work together in the next training session and also through the next 6 months. So, and part of what I do is create a flow of communication so we can have more ease and grace in how we communicate with each other. I call it speak the unspoken, or like, and so we have a packet in front of you that we're going to walk through during this time. And I'm going to show you some stuff on the slides. We're going to use them together. On the page 2 of your packet is what I call culture and communication. So this is how I model the room, and I start with this so that we're all grounded in how we can help and support each other, and how to give and receive feedback. In some spaces that I work in with boards, there's a lot of tension going on. So we just don't know each other. We haven't, we don't. Like I come in to resolve some situations, and I set it up with this. So I'm sharing this with you so that we can start embodying and practicing this right away and start learning right away. And I just use this sheet as a way to communicate and as a way to give and receive information so that people can receive it in a way that benefits them. And so the first thing I want to say is before, I was talking with Tanya earlier, and I actually used some of this on you when you were sharing with me your story. And I said, I invite you, might consider. And so, but before we say anything or we ask anyone or want to give feedback, we say, check our bias, like what is this about? Why do I want to share this? And make sure that what we're going to say serves their needs and not ours. Is that my ego speaking, or is it something that really needs to be said? And we can also ask permission. So then when we're going to share some things, people can say, hey, is it okay? Would you be willing to receive some feedback? And you can actually ask that for me at any time. I'm always striving to get better and to deliver better content. So you can ask for time and place. And what I ask you to do is speak from 2 things from experience. So in my experience, what I've seen, if I were you, this is what I would do. That's a different place than you need to. This is what hey, you should do this, you need to do this. And because as soon as you're told what to do immediately, you don't want to do it. So we have that internal pushback. And I like this a lot, wisdom versus good advice. So good advice is a conversation killer. Wisdom is sharing something from our experience. So good advice is, I would say, man, I feel sad today. And you would say, oh, you know what you should do? You should take a walk. That helps me feel better. When what I want you to do is say, wait, what's wrong? Why are you sad? So wisdom versus good advice. And these are just phrases that I use all the time that are really helpful. In my experience, from what I've seen, I invite you to consider, you might consider anytime I'm going to say something you know what, you might consider next time trying this, or in the future you might consider. And it really helps people just digest what you want to share with them. So I always start with this just to ground us in these, and so that you can start using these when you have board meetings, or I use this all the time with my kids. I invite you to consider cleaning the room before you ask me to ride. So I do that a lot. So what we're going to start with is the title of this is about creating more influence so you can create more income, so you can create more impact. And that's what we want to do. We all want to create more impact. And every single one of us is here. So what I do is what you do, because we want to create more impact. We want to serve more people. We want to do more. And to do that, we typically need income. But first we need influence, and that influence starts inside our organization. So we can't go and be influential outside until we understand, we can understand and articulate who we are, and then you can then create that influence inside, and then you create that influence externally. So the training here is about creating that internal influence, and that starts with, first of all, leadership of yourself, and then leadership of an organization. And I'm going to show you this model. So I've been working with nonprofits for 25 years, the last 17 or 18 as a consultant. I started when I was 10, and I developed like these 5 milestones. And in fact, you almost alluded to one when you were talking about like your organization just starting. So these 5 big milestones, and the first is survive. So these are typically new organizations that are headed by like one person, and if that one person would disappear, that organization would probably cease to exist. They probably don't have a lot of staff. They have a few board members, and most of their money comes from larger, like a few large gifts. And then when they grow, and once they hit survive, but let me back up for a second. Survive can often be a lonely place because you spend a lot of time explaining what you do. You feel like you're doing a lot of work and you're not connecting with people. So when you grow out of survive, you hit what I call compete. And then compete, now that your organization is established, maybe you're 5 or 10 years old, you've got some staff, you've got some board, you've got some donors coming in, you kind of look around at the competitive landscape and you're like, wait a minute, I'm so glad not to be in survival mode. I'm looking around and seeing what else is around me. And wow, how come they can charge $300 for their gala and we only charge $100? Or why are they getting all the press? Or how come they're always on social media? How come they have 30 board members and we only, I can't build more than 5 or 10? So you sort of look around. It's an envious position to be in because you know there's better and you don't quite know how to access it. And then when you grow out of that, you grow into what I call complacent. And most of my clients, I would say, are in the complacent mode. The money goes in, the money goes out, they deliver the programs, they do good work, and they're so excited not to be in this compete place anymore that everybody relaxes into where they're at. What happens is 2 things. There's something internal or external that flips them out of that complacency. So I'm working with a group right now who had a feasibility study to have a capital campaign. And the feasibility study came back and said, you don't have the clout in the community to raise the kind of money that you want to raise. So I'm from St. Louis. They're considered a St. Charles agency, which is on the other side of the river, and that was a big thing. And so that flipped them out. And my first question was, so what have you done to market yourself intentionally in the metro area? And they're like, nothing. I said, okay, now we know. The other thing that can flip you out is there comes a new player on the market. So a new organization comes up and they're getting a lot of energy. There's a shifting dynamics, like Kathy, you kind of alluded to, like there's some shifting dynamics going on, and that flips you out of complacency. You're like, whoa, the marketplace is changing, so now we have to adjust or adapt with it. So that flips you out and into what I call an organization of influence, is what I'm going to teach you how to be. And this is the dividing line, because that's when you start leading and communicating with intention, both internally and externally, and it starts internally first, and building that influence. And influence can be a very powerful place, because then you realize that your outcomes are about you, that you can create the future that you want, and that you can build the influence that you need to get the outcomes that you want. And then once you do that, then this is why this is down here, it's called Thrive. And this is where the resources, the people, the energy, everything you need flows to you. And this is a true place that actual nonprofits are. I ran into somebody that was a client of mine a while ago, and I said, how are you doing? And she said, oh my God, we're thriving. We're just growing, it's amazing. And this doesn't happen, it's not gonna happen tonight. This takes some time and intention and some focus. But when you stick with it, then when you come out of this other side, you can really create the influence that you need to access whatever you want, whether that's money, resources, programs. I'm working with an organization right now that they are putting they're taking some of their programs into other states. And so they're really growing with that. So this is also the way I really start every presentation that I do. And most organizations, most nonprofits, probably all, are built out of three things: a mess, a moment, or a mission. So a mess is, homelessness, addiction. People have messes in their lives. Moments are graduation, circus, mariachi kids, right? Those are moments that are like that, and those are beautiful moments that we like, that sear in our head. Graduation, camps, these are moments. And a mission, systems change, advocacy, policy, high level changes, right? And so and some organizations deal with messes, moments, and a mission. Most can identify, they really focus on one or the other. So I'm working with an organization that does policy and advocacy for child care organizations or companies, and to try to up-level the staff training. But they're really on a mission. They don't really deal with the day-to-day work of people of parents with young children, like your organization does, right? So you're trying to prevent messes, really. And most of the time, organizations are founded because somebody went through a mess and they said, that was a really horrible thing. I want the path to be easier for everyone after me. And in that, I'm going to start this organization. So they're founded in mess, moments, or missions. And from those mess, moments, or missions, we develop messages. We develop a way to talk about what we do. So you all introduce your organization to me, you talk about what we do. And you're sharing with me your mess, your moments, your missions. You didn't know that language, but that's what I'm looking for. And what happens is that we tend to talk too much about our mess, moment, and missions, and we say, hey, here's our mess, moment, and mission. Individual person, up at the top here, I'm going a little blind. Individual person up at the top here, that's who we're trying to reach. That I is for individual. There's a block. There's a reason why we're not reaching them. And it's because we want them to care about our mess, moment, and mission. What we're going to do, and we're going to go into this really deep in the fundraising part, I want to introduce the concept now because I refer to it a bit, is what is that individual's mess, moment, or mission? You, we all have messes, moments, and missions. I'm going to share mine. One of the values of leadership is, you model what you want to see. So I'm going to open my kimono to you and tell you my mess, moment, and mission. Because each one of us has one. And so when we can be of value to other people's mess, moments, and missions, that's when we can then build our influence. So, and in here then, this is what I'm going to put is, this is influence. We want to create that influence. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to flip the script from here, to looking down here, to our messages really need to be centered on here. What is your mess, moment, and mission? How can I help you with that? And in that, then you're going to be more open to me. Now, for programming, this makes sense, of course. In fundraising, sometimes it's hard to make sense because we're like, well, we want to tell people about what we do. We want them to understand what the impact they can have. Yes, and we all get our own philanthropic heart. We all have our mess, moment, and mission. And when we're not connecting with people, then our mess, moments, and missions don't align. A fundraising consultant I work with, she has a phrase called bless and release. So we just bless and release. And what makes fundraising hard is when we're trying to convince people to care and not connecting with people. Because if your mess, moments, or missions don't align, it's just not a fit. And that all starts with us. A lot of times, organizations, and we do this ourselves, we say, if I get the car, I'll be happy. If I get this job, I'll be happy. If I live here, I'll be happy. And you're happy for a little bit, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. That didn't quite have the long-lasting effect I wanted. Sometimes it's saying, if we have what we need is a strategic plan. If we had a strategic plan, we'd be on it. What we need is a better website. If we had a better website. And those things are important, but just like a car or a house, that's really not an internal shift. And so what we're looking for is creating organizations that lead effectively internally so that they can be, that they can embody what you want to attract. So you can't attract what you don't embody. So we have to embody that first, and then it will come to us. So, this is what I work with organizations on. You want to be connected, there's energy, excitement around what you do, you feel connection and community, and you want to flow. So one of the big things about nonprofits, which is really whack if you think about it, is the board structure, right? So I was on a board, I've been on boards, I've been often on boards. I was on a board for 5 years. I resigned so they could be my client. And when I was on that board, I was like, I sat in a room with these guys, most of them men, most of them corporate, lawyers, accountants, insurance, and I do consulting and marketing and fundraising consulting, and they said, and it took, an hour and a half, a quarter with these people. I don't know how they make decisions. I don't really know who they are. And you're entrusting me with the financial health of this organization. So the whole hierarchical system can sometimes be clumsy. And we can't change that, so what we're going to do is create the best outcomes we can within the system that we have. And the other thing is, like I said, we have to live our values and lead from within. So that's a big part of what we're going to talk about, is really living the values that we want to see, embodying what we want to see, and leading that way to attract what we need to attract. All right, before I get any farther into this, you can't lead people to liberation while creating prisons of our own design. So what I mean is, you can't teach people I know an organization in St. Louis that says we build strong kids, strong families, strong communities. Yet I know 4 people who worked there who had to quit because they didn't have enough time to spend with their own family because they were working 60 hours a week. So you can't say you're about strong families for those people, but not for those people. So you can't say that we're going to pull people out of poverty while paying poverty wages. So it comes from that alignment, and that's the misalignment, and that's the crazy making part, is how can we then say, if you say you're about creating this outcome, you're about creating that outcome, and it starts with us. So being grateful for a donor, it's lovely to be grateful for a donor, but gratefulness and gratitude is something you practice with everyone, right? So you can't be like nice to your donors and mean to your volunteers or your staff. Do you understand? So there's an alignment that we're looking for. So where what we say and what we do are as close as possible. Now I know it can't be perfect. I was with this organization today, we have frontline, people who work in child care centers, and I know they don't get paid enough. But at least there's an awareness that there is a gap, right? And that really starts with owning that awareness. The Big Brothers Big Sisters in St. Louis, they say their big message is, we want to be there for kids, and they have 1,000 kids on the waiting list. So we just want to make sure that we understand where we are, and then what they're working toward, what we're all working toward, is that alignment. Okay, so thoughts? This is where it's going. Thoughts, questions, comments? And I'm gonna sit down for a minute. I'm really good in heels, but I'm also human. So, any thoughts? Because I just dropped a big one on you here. So, any thoughts?
Well, one question is, you're assuming that everybody in the organization has a passion for the organization. And for a lot of people, it might just be a job.
Uh-huh.
They want to come in, they want to do a good job, they care about it, they help their life, but the organization is not, they're not driven to necessarily move the organization ahead, they're to do their job. And I think the way you painted this is more as a sense of, a community where everybody feels they've got to do 100% for this cause. And sometimes I don't know if that's realistic.
Okay, so, because you would assume that the people who work there, they're working there, and they're not passionate about what they're doing. They're doing their job, right? But they still have a role to fill. So yes, what this assumes, this assumes that people in the organization do have some level of passion, and also that there's a role for everyone there. And the idea is, and this is what we're going to get into later, is that we're all sort of moving in the same direction. And the leadership understands the board and the leadership understands that are we in alignment as leaders of this institution? Are we creating that alignment that allows us to embody what we see? Does that make sense? So yeah, I can see where there's a lot of people who this is a job, and yet they're also there for a reason. And can we maybe just, I'm going to talk about energy and energy states in a little bit, maybe just up their energy and commitment a little bit, not like 100%, but maybe if they're 25, they could be 40. And imagine the cultural shift that could change if people were just a little more invested. Like you have your board, and they're like connecting with people, like we've connected, this is all we can do. So there's compliance and commitment. So nothing makes me question my spelling more than standing in a room full of people. Okay. So compliance and commitment. So compliance is, I am doing this because it's something I said I would do, and I'm participating. I don't really have a passion about it, but I'm showing up for it. So when you have a gala I'm on the board of an organization, and they ask me to fill a table. I fill a table with my friends, and my friends are compliant. They come to the event and they pay their money. They might buy an auction item or two, and that's lovely, but that's really the end of their relationship with the organization. Commitment is that passion and that connection. And so commitment is, I have my Mess Moment mission is somehow being reflected in a way that serves my philanthropic heart, my philanthropic needs. So compliance is great, and I'm not knocking this. It's just understanding what you can get. So I was leading a workshop yesterday. Feels like a really long time ago. It was yesterday, and this woman said, we lost a bunch of sponsorships for our gala, and it's called, I have to tell you this because it's really cool. It's called Farmers Formal. It's an organic urban farm. I just thought that was really cute. Anyway, she said, because we had this guy who was in construction on our board, and he got all his friends to be sponsors. Well, he left the board, and we had created this whole sponsorship, because when we went back to those sponsors, they were like, yeah. I'm like, right, because they were committed to that person, not your organization. And so if that person moves on, then those sponsorships move on. Now, they served a great role at the time. I go to an event every year. It's called Hope in a Handbag, and it's about 500 women and 2,000 purses and 3 bars, and it's the best time. And yet only 4% of the people who come to this event actually are recurring donors to the organization. The event raises about $60,000, so for the organization it's worth it, but they know that these women, mostly women, are compliant. If this organization would say, you know what, we don't want to do this event anymore, and we're happy to will it to another nonprofit that wants to take it over, all those women would still come and buy a purse. And they like it because it goes to charity, but they're not necessarily connected to the charity. So the idea is creating more influence, creating more visibility, creating more connections, to connect to those like-minded people, to connect to those people who share our commitment. Because then we can build some longer-term relations. Not that there won't be turnover or anything. So compliance and commitment, we're going to talk more about that in fundraising next time, but that just came through for me. So being careful that we, compliance is not a bad thing. Compliance is why 70,000 people do that Komen walk every year. They're compliant. And yet, if I had a friend who had breast cancer, and when she kind of moved away from that experience and stopped doing the race, we stopped going because we were committed to her, not to Komen. There's still plenty of people there who are committed to Komen and will continue to be committed. So, but in these events and in these relationships that we make are the way that we can say, how can we connect with people to understand what they're committed to? I went to, for this organization, I actually wrote about them in my book. I love them, and I told the executive director, oh my God, I love you guys. I'm so excited to be here. And I wrote about you in my book, and I gave him my card, and I'm demonstrating commitment. Like, I'm there telling him, I love this organization. I'm so excited to be here. Here's my card. Call me. Come on, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? like, I was demonstrating commitment, and so being mindful of when people demonstrate that commitment, people get excited to like really attach to that, instead of trying to get people who are compliant to move to commit, because again, we can't convince, we can only connect. Okay, so we're going to go into leadership. We're going to use some of the worksheets now, the handouts in front of you. So the first part we're going to go to is, if you look at there's an overview of the agenda on page 2, but we're going to start with leadership. And what I want to do is, the first, building your leadership, strategic planning, embodying the mission, those are really internal things. And then 6, 7, 8 is those three items we're going to cover is more external. So we're going to take what we have and put it out there. So we're going to do the internal work, then we're going to do the external. And then at the end, what we're going to do is kind of set the intention for what you want to have happen out of this. Like one of the first things I said, breakthroughs happen in a day, transformation happens over time. So for this experience to be as beneficial for you as possible, it's like understanding how we can work together over the coming months to create the outcomes that you want to see for your organization, to truly create the transformations that we want. So this is a talent. It's called Talent Dynamics, and it was based on a model called Wealth Dynamics, and it's like a DISC thing, or Myers-Briggs. What this looks at are the assets and the complementary skills that people have. So I bring this up because one of the ways that we need to be in alignment is that what we're good at and what we do are as close as possible. So in this model, we have four major categories that are grounded in the weather, and in elements. So a dynamo is a lot of energy that's creating, giving life. That's wood, that's spring. A blaze is something that kind of keeps things going. They're summer, that heat, they keep things burning. And a tempo is the earth body. So they're grounded, and they keep the trains moving on time. These people are about pacing and timing. So you can say the dynamo is the head in the stars, and the trader has the ear to the ground. The steel is the metal, the winter. These are our detail people, the spreadsheet people, and they keep everything detailed and ordered. And so, these are also grounded in this innovation. So up here, we're looking at more innovation, intuitive. Down here, this is sensory, this is timing, this is information. On these sides, we magnify and multiply. So magnify, extroverted, this is extroverted. You're going to take what you have and make it bigger. And this is where you take what you have and do it over and over and over again. So when we look at who we are as people, so you can identify, and these names here are types of talents that people have based in the four seasons, the four elements. So a creator is a person who's a creator. They are artists, inventors, entrepreneurs. Creator mechanics are people who create and then they start a business around it. So Steve Jobs was a creator mechanic because he invented something and he found a way to make it over and over and over again. Creator stars, I'm a creator star. Stars, their talent is based on having that kind of star power that gravitates people toward them. Supporters are folks who lead from the back. So you don't have to be a leader that's out front. You can be a leader that supports and makes stars out of everyone around you. So one of my clients is a supporter. I couldn't even find a picture of her online. She doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. She doesn't have anything. I don't need any of that. But she's an amazing leader. Deal makers are people who, let me say, traders are people that buy low, sell high. They understand the gaps in the market and they figure out how to fill them. So a deal maker is a supporter trader, so they understand how to connect people and they understand how the gaps in the market. So what we want and what we're looking for in our organizations is balance. Okay? So when we have 45 stars, it becomes a bit of a problem because no one's looking at the spreadsheets. When we have everyone who's looking at the spreadsheets, but no one's getting out into the community, that's a problem, right? When we have people who are just keep making stuff over and over and over again, and no one's figuring out how to pay for it, that's a problem. So we're looking at balance, and the idea that every person brings assets to the table. If you assume that, and looking at your organization, that your fellow board members, your fellow staff members, what are their gifts, and are we using them for their gifts? Because their gifts may not be going out, right? Now, here's the thing, you could do it. So if you're an accumulator and you hate speaking in front of people, you could speak in front of people one time and survive. So you know, I have my own company, you have your own company. Like, I don't like this part of my work because I live here, but I have to visit it but if I had to live here every day, I would be like, oh. So alignment is when we are living in our strengths, right? And that's what makes flow, and that's what makes ease. So when we look at supporters, lords, people, like all these people, we say, okay, they all have assets. And that's what I like about this model, because it assumes that there's a seat around the table for everyone. And that we all need these. So somebody said to me the other day, I'm always coming up with these good ideas, but then, you know, there's other people on the board that are like, well, look, I don't think this will work, and I don't think this will work. And I said, but that's not a bad thing. That's balance. That's energetic balance of, hey, we have an idea. Okay, great. That person is not objecting to you. That person is sitting there figuring out, okay, how could this really actually happen? They're not trying to stop you from doing it. They're trying to actually help you make that happen. So I like this model because it shows that we have balance. And any other comments? All right, I'm going to keep going. All right, so we're going to talk about being a leader yourself. And this is something I work on every day. I do a lot of personal development work. I have a business coach, and I would say 80% of what we do is personal development work. So the first thing is we want to, I don't know why these do this, so I gotta fix that, is we're gonna eat our own cooking. So we have to embody what we want to attract. So I wouldn't tell you to do anything that I haven't done myself. So a lot of times you say, well, I want my board member to ask somebody for money. It's, they don't give, but they're going to ask other people to give. And that's not in alignment. So, and so the other day I was talking with some Marines. It's called the Marines Focus Foundation. And I said, they help Marines who are struggling to transition to civilian life, and they provide these boot camps. And I asked them, as the leaders of this organization, well, do you ask for help? Do you have, because they provide mentors and guidance. I said, do you ask for help when you're struggling? Do you have guidance? And they looked at me, and the whole room kind of looked at me, and I said, because you're asking these veterans to come to you and ask for help. So do you ask for help? And they said, well, sometimes. I said, so then you can be in alignment. Then you know what it feels like, and you know, and so you can embody what you want to see. Now, just being conscious of, is that, would I do this? If I wouldn't do this, why am I asking somebody else? So I've already mentioned alignment, but we're gonna eat our own cooking, right? So if we wouldn't do it, it's hard to ask other people to do it. And so when we're looking at what functions do we want, or what are we asking for our community, and was that something that we would actually do or ask of ourselves? And I really work on this. Like, I wouldn't tell you to do anything that here's some techniques or things that I wouldn't believe in or that I wouldn't own myself. So alignment is, who you are and what you do are as close as possible. It's not 100%. We're not perfect. We're not perfect people. We look for alignment. And so I refer to that as I eat my own cooking, So this really hit me the other day when I was telling my son, I have a 15-year-old who's on a very wild streak right now, and I said to him, AJ, of course, he hangs out at this gas station in the seediest, like, little part of my beautiful neighborhood. And I said, AJ, the people you surround yourself with are who you become. You know, those people that you surround yourself with, they're the ones that you're going to become those. So maybe we could find people. And I'm sure he's like, they're my friends. I said, of course they're your friends. I'm not saying that they're not good or bad people. I'm saying they may not be the people that are they living good lives? Are they living the life that you want to live? They may not reflect who you want to be. Maybe you could work with somebody, like hang out with people who reflect who you want to be. And then I realized, I have some people in my life, it just hit me like, wait, I have some people in my life that don't really reflect who I want to be either. And, you know, and so there's a couple of times that I said stuff to my kids and I feel like I'm really saying it to myself. And so I'm checking my alignment when I'm parenting, when I'm coaching clients, when, you know, in friendships, like am I in alignment with what I'm saying with them? And I said, nobody's perfect. It's not that. It's just like, but the awareness of it, then you can start to think about, wait, am I telling somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself or that I wouldn't believe to do? And then just checking that alignment. Please make any comments that you want. Okay, so this is going to be a big one. So this is the idea of being a model of sufficiency. So adopting the idea of abundance. There is enough for everyone. There is enough for everyone. There's enough time, there's enough money, there's enough people for everyone. And there's a book called The Soul of Money. And I would encourage everyone here to read this book. It's by Lynn Twist. Now the book is not about fundraising. The book is about transforming your relationship with money and how to create a better relationship with money where it's serving your higher purpose. However, the woman who wrote this book was a professional fundraiser, and she worked in hunger relief. She worked for the Hunger Relief Project, and she raised millions and millions and millions of dollars all over the world in this hunger relief project. And she has some fascinating ideas around philanthropy because of going to Bangladesh, where people had literally nothing, to the homes of very wealthy people sitting next to famous movie stars and directors, and the crazy making of the haves and the have-nots. But the idea, she calls it, I call it abundance, but the idea is a modeling of sufficiency. So, when we assume that there's haves, here's people who have, and here's people who have not. And then that creates that power dynamic in which everyone has assets and everyone has something they can bring to the table. And this book really explores this in depth. So, and I consume audiobooks really quickly, and so I was listening to this on vacation a couple months ago, but it is amazing. One of the stories she tells is that Mother Teresa had 50 orphanages and she did not have a surplus. She ran 50 orphanages and she did not have a surplus of funds. She's like, now I'm not saying to do that. I'm not saying we're not proper to do that. I'm just saying she believed in sufficiency. She believed that there would be enough. And then if you look at your times, like when you were really, you know what, the money came. We needed it and the money came. We lost the sponsors and guess what? We found some other money. And when we model sufficiency, then we can relax other people. So, and you know what? Here's the thing. This is what I told this woman the other day. She's like, I'm really struggling with this idea of abundance. I said, well, how would you rather go to work every day? Believing that there's enough out there for everyone or believing that there's not enough? Because either way, it's a belief, right? So I just rather believe that there's enough because that makes my day a lot better. And rather than fear and scarcity. Because if we're modeling fear and scarcity, then the people we serve are going to pick that up. So if we're telling people you can be anything you want, but then the culture is, we're not sure what's happening. This is, you know, there's a lot of fear and scarcity around what's going on. So I told you my daughter's transgender, and I became aligned with it's called Metro Trans Umbrella Group in St. Louis. And the executive director said, he was commenting on Facebook, he went to a big human rights campaign gala, and he was very uncomfortable in the space where there was a lot of money. He's like, I don't know people who can drop $3,000 or $5,000 a night. Who are these people? And I said, you know, you know, he said, we're hurting people, we're struggling people, because my own child is trans, so I'm not doubting that. I said, but Sarah, we need to be careful what we're modeling, because if we're modeling this idea of we're struggling people to our clients, then they're internalizing the fact that you're just compounding the struggle what if we could model sufficiency? We don't have a lot, but we have enough, and we're gonna be okay to be grounded in that, because I truly believe that's what he thinks. And I said, and then I also was explaining to him, if you have the have, and then you assume that you're not have not. But you know that Human Rights Campaign, their big focus right now is the transgender and the transgender community. They need you, right? You are an asset, and you can sit at that table. And because he got very overwhelmed and felt like a have-not, because he's with people who monetarily had haves. So the idea is being a model of sufficiency. There's enough time for us tonight. There's enough people in the room. There's enough money. People, and I used to say this, I would say there's only so much money for philanthropy, so you have to get the biggest slice of the pie. But that's not really true. There's money, we just not connect. The other thing is, like I said, open your own kimono, so creating cultures of psychological safety. So, on the Maslow hierarchy of needs, the second one is safety, psychological safety. So the idea of creating safe spaces. This is what happens a lot, especially in board meetings. There's so much that's not said because there's not an environment that fosters that trust. And especially between staff and board, there's a lot of what I call hallway side conversations where people say what they really wanted to say, but they don't have the nerve to say it in the room. And staff members don't leave jobs; they leave environments that don't suit them. And so the idea is that it's okay to, you can be a model that it's okay to say anything. It's okay to say the truth. Because if I'm modeling, if I'm in abundance and alignment, I know that whatever you say is going to be okay, right? Whatever you say is going to be all right. And because everything's already okay. So you can speak the truth. And then what I call speak the unspoken. So what am I thinking that I'm afraid to say? Or what am I thinking? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to say that because A, B, C. Because most people just want to be validated. Like, we know this. But the idea is to make sure that you reward fair. In my old job, my old boss, I knew I could tell her anything. If I screwed up, if I messed up, I know I could tell her anything. And she would be like, okay, let's fix it. And if you have that idea of I can come to you with anything, then you're going to have the kind of dialogue around the table that you need to really solve problems. And I actually just talked with an organization who's having a retreat because they had a big break in trust within this institution. It's kind of a generational thing. And it's like, how can we then rebuild the trust so they can move forward and do the important work that they need to do? So, but that starts with you being the model for what you want to see. So if I do a training and I want people to tell a story, I tell a story first, right? So I'm not going to say, hey, why don't you tell me something deep about you, and I'm just going to sit and be the receiver of that. And then the last thing is, is leading with emotional courage. So if you can feel anything, you can do anything. So when you're in the moment, you're thinking, what am I afraid to feel? And this is truly what we can really help our boards do, especially around fundraising. So when we do the fundraising thing, we're going to go really deep into what am I afraid to feel in this conversation? Am I afraid to feel rejection? Oh, I can never ask somebody for money. What if they gave to me out of guilt and they just felt obligated? That would make me feel horrible. Okay, what is wrong? So what is so bad about that feeling that sometimes we organize our whole lives around not feeling certain things, not feeling rejected, not feeling alone. And what would happen if we felt those things? And usually what I say is, well, will it kill you? Okay, then you're fine. But so let's what are you afraid to feel? So that is a great question. So when you are having, and this is our ability to lead with emotional courage, which means you're going to speak the truth to what we see. So if you can feel anything, you can do anything. So what are you afraid to feel? And I had a conversation like, okay, a client, I'll tell you, a client came to one of my workshops and the woman he sent did not participate, and she was very disappointed in the experience. And I said, okay. And after I allowed myself to be a little bit upset, because I really want to give value everywhere I go, I said, okay, let's have a conversation around this. And I would like to come to your office and talk with you two, the person, her boss and this woman. And the three of us talk together about what happened so that we can all learn from the experience. And so I was really nervous, of course. This is, and I said, okay, what am I afraid to feel? So I go in and I sit down, and he sits down, and I said, oh, where's Michelle? And he said, oh, she's out of the office at a meeting. So that was so uncomfortable for her and I said, well, let's continue the conversation. I think she missed an opportunity. And, she gets to be where she is, and that she just wasn't there yet. I was like, and I think I told him, I said, I would love to know what she was so afraid to feel that she couldn't be even in the building when I was in the building. So what is the disconnect? Because if we could have that conversation with holding ourself in check and just being a reflection for who she was and what she needed to tell me, then we can get past it. And so what happens is we don't speak, we take it home, we tell our spouse, we tell our friends, and we don't get the candor on the table that we need to really explore what's going on. And again, the board structure doesn't really support this very well, because if you have quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, and they're an hour, hour and a half, and there's already a lot on the table. So when there's discord, we tend to table it and what happens is probably the senior people kind of make the decisions and everyone follows along. And then what happens is, well, in the case that I know, we went downstairs to the bar and talked about what we were going to just say later. But I want to move more of those conversations into the room so that we can hold our ego, out and put our vulnerable selves forward and really make the connection and have the conversation. And the last thing is, so I'm going to wrap this phase up, but the idea is, somebody said, we want to define, how can we define the roles? Well, there's no template for you need this person, this person, this person, this person. The idea is, what is the role of a board member for you? What do you want to do that? And so on your thing is, on page 5, I want you to just take a couple minutes, what is the role of a board member for you? What is your definition of that? And what do you want to be that you're not now? And if you're not a board member, you can speak through them. You can just say, here's where they're at, and here's where I'd like them to be. And then, what's causing that gap? So we have to define, the idea is there's no cookie cutter thing. It's here's how your board should function. It's the idea of looking deep and deciding for yourselves, here's how I want the board to function. Or here's how I want to function as a board member. Here's how I would like my board to function. And I'm going to, I dive into the deep stuff right away. It's going to get, we're going to get a little more tactical. So you're starting out this process with a disparity in misalignment. Because one wants one, and they're like, okay, I have to do it because the board says, and they are ridiculous, and they don't even know what they're talking about. They have no idea how hard this is. So what I teach and coach is let's move away from the idea of the success of what we do based on our ability to meet the goal. The success of what we do is based on our ability to put that plan in action every day. So now this is stuff you probably know, goals. And this is worksheet. I'm working off 2 things here, and I need to make sure I pay attention to both of them. So page 6. So I'm sure people know, goal setting. SMART. We're going to have SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, ambitious, relevant, timely. You probably all get that. I encourage people to have as many goals as you want, but the more you have, the less likely you are to achieve them. So especially in strategic planning, we tend to want to go really far ahead, 2-3 years. It's a long time. So let's look at what are the 2-3 main things we want to accomplish so that we can make sure we accomplish those. And just remember that goals are things we can't control. So, and we want to control, but honestly, we really don't have any. Goals are things we can't control. So I need other people to help me achieve that goal, to raise money. I need other people to help me enact things in my organization. But the idea here is what we want are KPIs, reward daily activity
What
instead
is
of
a
goals.
KPI?
So a KPI right here is key performance indicators. So I'm going to give you an example. This is I eat my own cooking. These are my KPIs. I do them every single week. I am rewarded. I reward myself. But I meet with my coach every week. Friday, well, I do them on Friday. I meet with her about once a month. Now, I'm going to tell you, last Wednesday, my computer got wet, and I didn't have it for a week. Which made prepping for this super exciting. Very fulfilling experience for me. So, but I keep these and I do look at them every week. And so we're rewarded because if we're doing the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly action, the goals are going to happen. They just are. Happens as we say, the board says, hey, let's raise an extra $25,000, $100,000, $5 million, whatever it is. That's the goal that's set. And every day we're not in action towards that goal is a bigger mountain to climb. So, and it's like, you know what, February's really hard. January's really crazy. We just had the gala. I'll start that in February. Okay, February's really crazy. I'll start that in March. Now you've got 9 months left of the year and the goal's still there, and now we've lost momentum. And really the biggest thing is just keeping in that sustained effort. Every day, that sustained effort. And as a board, that's what I want to see because I know that's what creates success. And that you can liberate people from being owned by goals. Like, you know what, it's high and we're ambitious and that's great. And, if we say it's 100,000, you wanted it 50, I wanted 100, we set it at 100, but guess what? You pushed a little harder and raised 75. Again, abundance, because we know, and it's okay. And it's not that you have to make this amount or you're not going to be rewarded. It's like that you did the daily work. You sustained that plan every day, every week, every month. And whatever we decide are these key performance indicators as an organization, then we look for those, because if we're doing those, then the goals are going to happen. So the reporting out of people is, what are you doing? And we're going to get into this more in the fundraising, but it's a numbers game. So if I need 100 new gifts, how many people do I need to have meetings with? If there's 2 out of 10 say yes, then I need to meet with this many people. That means I need to call this many people, which means I need to be exposed to this many people, and just build that inverted pyramid of numbers, and then start doing the work every day. And when we're doing the work every day, then it comes. Now, when I work with organizations, there's a tension, and the tension is, how can we if we're so busy in the present, just fulfilling the needs of the present, how can we create space to build our future? And there's that tension. So how can I live in the present and the future? Well, if we want to grow and change, we need to, but the present is always there for us. It's always accessible. Those emails are always going to be there for you. The present is always going to be there for you. We need to look at if we want to grow forward, making space for the future. But once we build momentum into that, then it gets exciting. And then when we see that momentum, that's what creates that energy around it. So in any new idea, business, campaign, anything, there's kind of 5 stages. And the first is the idea. And then the second is devotion. So you have an idea and you want to implement that idea. And then you start working on it. And inevitably, the idea doesn't come to fruition. The goal doesn't happen as quickly as you want. And so this is called devotion to activity. And you say, we want to raise money, we want to have a fundraising campaign. And it'll probably take us like 6 months to raise this money. 2 months into it, you haven't raised money, you're like, oh my gosh, well this obviously isn't working, let's stop and try something else. So you go back to ideation, right? Because you don't think it's working because it's not working as fast as you want it to. And you're doing a whole lot and you're not getting a lot back from it. And you're like, oh, this is going into some black hole of despair that I would never get it out of. The idea is it takes a little bit for things to catch on into the marketplace, for you to make it. So I'll give you an example. I was listening to this person who's an expert in podcasting talk about having a podcast, and she said, you have to have 40 podcasts before it really gets traction. I know, I was like, you should see her face, she was like, what? I'm like, I would have done 5, and if nobody listened, I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. But when she said that, that gave me like this anchor of experience, like she knows from starting a podcast, this is what it's going to take to do that. And it completely reframed my expectation. And also said, yeah, I'm not really ready to do that. I would have started it and stopped and gone to something else and started that and stopped. This is a huge issue, especially in marketing, because a lot of times like, oh, I did a bunch of social media, nothing happened, so we stopped that. Oh, I did a little, and we stopped that. Because it takes a little bit, but one, if you can hang on and do a bunch and not getting enough back to it, then you hit momentum, and momentum is the highs and lows, and I'm in momentum right now, because I had to live for a long time here. I had an airport meltdown in June. I had a meltdown, like I came unglued, and I was like, I hate this job, I hate this life, I'm gonna run away, but I have people around me who are like, stay devoted, stay devoted, stay devoted. Most ideas, and anything can work with the right strategy. Most ideas can work. We abandon them before they have a chance. Then if you get into this, ideation, devotion, momentum, I always forget this word, sorry, stabilization. And then it is integration. So you have a new program, maybe you have a new revenue stream where you're, hey, we're going to have, maybe we're going to try a social entrepreneur kind of idea where we're going to sell some services, and we've never done that before. Hey, this is an amazing idea. Now we're doing it, man, where people aren't really catching on. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. Let's go back to another idea. This is the key piece for business development, for marketing, fundraising, for our lives. That devotion to activity, when we're doing a lot and we're not getting a lot back for it, because that requires some faith, right, and some belief, and that if we keep going, we're going to see some traction. And then you get to momentum. Okay, now you're like up and down, and it's exciting, and there's a lot of highs and lows. But then you get to stabilization. Now it's just integrated as a part of your organization. It's a habit, right? It's a habit part of your organization. Then the integration, which means, hey, we did this. Let's go back and do it again. We proved to ourselves that we can create something and build it and allow it to grow. Now let's use that, and what's the next thing we want to grow? What's the next thing we want to grow? So
if I'm a board member, what kind of KPI, what kinds of things are things that I would want to be thinking about?
So 2 things. One is the KPIs are important to the staff, and you as a board member, then instead of saying how close are you to your goal, you're going to say, show me how well you're performing with your key performance indicators.
Right. I mean, I'm there.
Right, so that's of a board member to the staff. As a board member for yourself, you can, and as a board, as a group, you could decide what your key performance indicators are. How much are you committed to raising over the next year as a board? What, as a board, what attendance what percentage of attendance how many people do you want? Belief statements are statements that you develop as an organization that ground you, and this helps the decision making, and it helps you build influence, because now you know where you stand. And so especially when we come to the end, we talk about advocacy and policy. Belief statements are a way to ground an organization and its values. So this is an organization I worked with a couple of years ago, but we developed these belief statements. There was a lot of dissension between the board and the staff, or especially around issues around racial justice and kids in juvenile court custody. And the board didn't want to get involved, and the staff did. And we use the belief statements as a way to help them ground themselves in their work. so that they could reflect each other and we could heal that division. We have, so we can have personal belief statements, right? So I believe, here's things I believe personally. You already know some of them. Then I can, when I develop the personal belief statements, then I can look organizationally and we can develop them as an organization. This is an amazing tool. So like your board orientation, I work with someone and I do his new client onboarding. So I'm basically like his new client orientation. And then one of the ones I did was with the Marines, and we came up with their belief statements. And during the workshop, one of the Marines said, now we just got through an hour of coming up with these belief statements. We're by, for, and about Marines, and we lead by example and all these belief statements that they had. Then the guy said, he was the board president, he's very wealthy, very connected, and he said, there's a guy who wants to give us money, but he wants us to serve other branches of the military. And so should we serve other branches of the military because we want this money? And he said, what do you think I should do? I'm like, so what do you think I think you should do? But I said, let's look at your belief statements. What do we believe? You believe and I said, what you're feeling is the scarcity of not getting that gift because the guy would like you to serve other branches of the military. What you're missing is that there's how much opportunity that's going to come to you when you stand strong in your values, and all the people who share those values, that in this case the value of the Marine culture, would align with you. And I said, so he took that and he went back to the funder and he said, listen, we would love to work with you, we would love your investment, we really are just buying about Marines. And the guy was like, okay. Because it was just sort of a wish, it wasn't a thing, But he was like, they're getting ready to change their programming, So you're chasing the money. You're chasing, instead of being aligned in your values. So belief statements, values, people call them value statements, belief statements. I call them belief statements. They're in my book. I go into great detail about belief statements in my book, but how to formulate them. And then just so that when there is tension, when there is, how do we make this decision, we go to the belief statements. And then also what I do is work with staff culture. So where the belief statements, like I'm working with an organization that Steve reminds me very much of yours. It's called Youth in Need. They're a little bigger, but they serve a lot of young families. They go upwards too. And so putting these belief statements and making them visually present in their different daycare, childcare centers, in the different places where they work, to sort of align and solidify the culture when we're talking about living the mission. So integrity in programs, finances, and fundraising. So if you're not paying your bills on time, right? So if you're not paying your bills as an organization, it's going to be hard for you, if you're not investing and covering your own stuff, it's going to be hard for you to ask people to invest in you. So looking at that integrity and alignment in your programs and your finances and your fundraising, are we delivering the outcomes we said we would in our programming? Are we in alignment in our finances so that we can be forthright in our fundraising? And then also transparency and communications. It's always better to tell the truth, even if it's scary. So a colleague of mine, she's a board development person. She goes all over the world, and she had a colleague who ran a lab in Africa, and he had a big funder, a Japanese funder who funded this nonprofit, and he literally had monkeys destroy his lab. And the monkeys came in and destroyed the lab, and he said, how can I tell this guy the monkeys destroyed my lab? And Carol was like, you just tell him. We just are transparent in our communications. This is what we do. We tell the truth. And we believe that people will honor us with. Whether you are conscious of it or not, this is exactly what you're doing. Board members, staff, volunteers, clients, anybody who interacts with your organization, you're making a promise to them. And it is an emotional connection, because we connect first with the heart, right? And fundraising is heart, mind, wallet, right? So it's a heart first. And when we create that promise, when we deliver, we create that trust. And when we create that trust, we create that integrity that allows people to connect with us. And we don't have to ever say them. We never speak a brand promise. It's just understood. So, but this is the highest connection. And so the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I want you to be able to articulate your value. The most common way you deliver your organization's messaging is in person, is one-to-one. So especially if we're developing KPIs where we're asking people, hey, call and share what you know. We want to build some consistency around those messages. And this is what does that. So I'm going to give you a brand promise, which is Target. Like, everyone's been to a Target. Like, I love Target. I'm not an employee of Target, but I know that their brand promise is you're going to have a great experience here. Like, I have never seen a cluttered Target. I've never seen a messy Target. It's a recreational activity. You just sort of wander down the aisles and you go for toilet paper and you come back with throw pillows and, and new shoes. And so when they know, they never say you're going to have a great experience. They don't have to, because you feel it. Now, if you go to Walmart, that is not my experience, right? I can't get out of Walmart fast enough. I don't even like to go there. I hate when I go there. But why do I go there? Right, cheap. But Walmart never promised me I'd have a good experience. They promised me low prices. So for their promise, they are delivering. So what promise does your organization make to the people that it interacts with? And once we are grounded in that promise, then we can then everything that can flow from there. When I talk about the flow of communication, up and down the hierarchy, and then inside and outside the organization, we understand exactly the value that we're grounded in, and we embody it. So one of the greatest things you can do as a board member is to ask for this, the staff, and work with the staff to develop it. And in your book on page 9, I have a formula to help you do this. So it's three-pronged. It's a beautiful little formula that now we're not going to solve this tonight. I'm just saying this is something that if you are struggling or if your other board members are telling you we don't know how to talk about the organization, this is the way to solve that. And it is what you do. So it's we, and then for, so they can. So in my client situation, we work with. We mentor veterans who are struggling to transition to civilian life so they can live the life that they deserve. So it's always, and here's why this is important, because you are more than a laundry list of programs and services. And if your job is to go out and build your influence, to connect and talk with people, it's not we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this. It's here's the outcome we create, here's the difference we make, here's the magic that surrounds us. And then how you do it is not that. If they want to learn about that, that's great. But when you say, oh, I'm with this organization, and they say, oh, what do you do? Or ask you, tell me what your agency does. What I'm really looking for is what difference do you make? What outcomes are you creating? And so this is the best way to do that. But remember, the thing I want you to remember about this is the most common way we deliver our organization's brand is verbally. And we really sweat over every word of that brochure, every, the website, what does it say, we wordsmith, and then we kind of all talk about it in all different ways. So as a board member, and this can be part of the orientation, is, hey, here's how we talk about ourselves. So in the book, it goes into really detail about how to develop these. I just wanted to give you that because for me, that is the biggest thing that I hear, not the biggest, one of the biggest things is, I just don't know how to talk about it. And when I talk about it, people get bored, or I'm not engaging when I speak about it. And I love it, and I'm so passionate about it, I just don't know how to speak about it. I work on this a lot, I'm not perfect at it, no one's perfect at it. Just the first step is awareness, and when you're aware of that, then you can have different kinds of conversations. And, one of the things that I didn't put on the feedback sheet that just came through for me now is that we don't talk about anybody in the room
when they're, we don't talk about anybody outside, in the room, when they're not in the room. So I make a pact with my team or your board that I don't talk about you when you're not in the room. And because that is one of the biggest things is people go out and have the real conversations that they want to have because they're afraid to have those conversations in the room. And even just setting that stage, like this is something we just as a group we're going to agree that this is just not going to happen. So like Tanya, you and I aren't going to go and have a conversation after this and talk about everyone here. This is just something we're going to agree to. Now, most people wouldn't do that, but when we say that out loud, and then Lori would come and be like, you know what, Lori, or I would be, God, Lori, you wouldn't believe what Rita said, da, da, da. Like, you know what, no, we agreed we were going to do that, and then you're going to hold me in check. So that just changes the whole dynamic. People just act like grown-ups, man. It's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to talk real quick about advocacy and policy. So we talked about how money doesn't solve problems. Passion and expertise solves problems. Passion and influence can also create a bigger voice for our organization, and that is definitely a problem that something we can work on. And there's 3 ways board members can really work in advocacy. And one is understanding your budgets and how much money comes from the government, from federal, state, and local governments, so that you can be aware if there are threats to your budget that you're not even aware of right now. And let me tell you what, the political winds are changing all the time, aren't they? So, and let me step back up real quick because there's something on the chart that isn't here. A lot of organizations think that advocacy is illegal, that is lobbying. And that is not true. Lobbying is when you say vote for this candidate. Anything else you can do. So these are the best ways that board members can help with this. And one of the reasons why I talked about alignment and embodying and all of this is so that when you have that voice, you understand that you have influence. You have influence. Yes, ma'am.
So the only thing that's illegal is saying voting for this candidate, not voting for this bill?
Sorry. Voting for something.
Okay.
You can't say vote this way.
Okay. So
But-
for a candidate or a specific bill?
Right.
You can say in Illinois, you can say, you know, we want you to fund X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
right?
We want better housing, we want.
Right. Yeah. I think.
But we can fill out, we can fill out what they call the, pink slips or whatever they're called. What?
Yeah. We don't have those.
And, yeah, so that you can sign on to the Secretary of State thing, and for each bill, you can go and you have to put in your name and all that stuff, and you can put whether or not you support it or don't support this bill.
The bill.
Yeah.
But the person.
But you can't say vote for President X or
Right,
vote for.
yes.
But I can tell my
You can tell people to vote.
You can tell people to vote for this bill.
I can't. So I could tell a congressman, please vote for this bill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you can't.
That's all.
Because
can't
when we do
advocate for a
like lobby
particular
days and some
That's
people
fine.
around there usually doing that in support of something or another.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fine.
So like in Missouri, we had a big thing with Planned Parenthood and abortion, and then there was like a bill, and then people went and said, you do not do this, right? Okay,
But you know
budget.
which groups tend to go which side of the spectrum.
Right, and one of the things is that in policy, different organizations have different roles. So some like to be out there and the rabble-rousers. Other people like to just have the seat at the table and be a little more quiet. Sometimes those organizations can be intentional with each other, but it really is a balance, and it's a critical timing on when to act like that. But for us, really typically, it's a budget thing, being aware of that, and it's a strategy thing. So understanding the strategies that you have in place that are dependent on state funding and creating strategies to help build your influence. And that's another KPI I think that boards could really look at is how could we be better advocates for our organization, and what are some performance indicators that would be around that. And because the biggest is engagement, so how can we have seats at the table, not just at politics, but at tables of influence? How can I, as a board member, have access to seats at the table that I can bring this institution in with me. And that's also like attending lobby days. And even things like, at Foster Adopted Care Coalition, where I was on the board, every November we do this the bus. And all the board members get on the bus. And they take us on a tour. And they take us on a tour of the foster care system. Here's the courtroom. Here is, we go visit legislators. We go see the courtrooms. We meet different people. And the bus, it's all day. Not just about, I think about 10 or 12 organizations are part of this, and it's a bus and board members. And I am required in a 3-year term. I was required to go one time on the bus. And so when I upped for my 2nd-year term, I went on the bus again. That's what I agreed to. But that engagement at that higher level, that programming, then really helped me gain a new perspective. Now my kids are adopted out of foster care. I didn't think I don't need the bus. I live the bus, you know. But for others, it was very eye-opening. They're very compassionate about the cause. They're very committed to creating, stable forever families. That they got to really to learn and understand. Another thing that this isn't in here, but we do two things. One is a lunch and learn. Lunch and learns are monthly, and board members, and this is another key performance indicator. Board members are asked to invite people to lunch once a month. It's not a fundraising ask. You just come and have lunch, and they introduce the organization. And they do a video, and it's a little presentation, and you hear from people, and they serve you lunch, and then that's it. And if you want to talk more, you can. If you don't, that's not too. Board members are asked to fill some of the tables at these lunch and learns. Another thing we do is they're called deep dives, and deep dives are for current donors who want to know more. So in the foster care system, LGBTQ, many kids that are in foster care, there's a high incidence of LGBTQ kids who are getting kicked out of foster homes or living on it because of that. It's a big problem. And so we do a deep dive. So we ask people to come in and learn more about this specific issue. One was grief and trauma. Everybody's gonna come get grief and trauma training. How are helping kids deal with grief and trauma? The next one is LGBT. And so we're doing a deep dive. And this is for people who are already involved in the organization, but as a board member, I was asked to invite donors. Even if I didn't know them, I'd say, hey, will you call a couple of people and ask them to come to this if they're interested in learning about this. And the staff really guided me on, they kind of knew the people that they wanted in the room. So I wasn't just like blindly calling people. But those are great examples of engagement that even though I'm not advocating on a policy, like I'm not in elected offices knocking on doors, I created more influence in my circles and helped me understand the influence I had as a board member to create higher level engagement. And so, and for me, I know organizations. I met a guy the other day. He has an organization that is completely federally and state funded, almost 100%. And he's like, we do not have a donor base. And his board is like, we have never been asked to raise money. We don't want to raise money. We don't want anything to do with this. It's like, so their budget is like all about it. Their strategy is let's ignore it, So the idea is how can we bring them along slowly into the higher places so that they can, and he may lose some people because this is not something they really wanted to do. So,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So your deep dive thing, so like we have this group called the Advisory Council, we're trying to sort of figure out what to do with them. And we would have meetings once or twice a year with them, or every quarter, whatever it is. But your deep dive, would that be like introducing them to a new program you've developed or something? Or when you talk about grief and whatever, or would it be more, because a lot of them know a lot about domestic violence, right?
Yes.
So it's not like we need to educate them on domestic violence.
no, it'd be educating them on maybe something new or educating them
Like we have a new financial awareness program for survivors.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit broader than the program, like financial awareness in general, and specifically how this program is helping that.
Okay.
Is that, so these are people who are already know and invested in your cause, you're just elevating, because they are already showing their passion, you're just helping them up level their passion. So that,
Because we're trying to figure out how to engage them.
right, and so, you know, cause to bring them in and explain to them the basics of domestic violence would make them mad,
Right.
right? And
Some of them are former board members or presidents of the board.
right, so this is for people who already feel like they know a lot, and they're handpicked to be in this room, and because you are so invested in our kids, and we wanna show you what we're doing, that's really on the forefront. That's, because this is an organization that prides itself on innovation, that's really at the forefront, and because we're aligning our best mission and moments, a lot of their donors are really people that really like the idea of innovation. So, we're gonna break, and before we do, I wanna talk about, what's next. So, breakthroughs happen today, transformation happens over time. So, what I want to
remind
remind
everybody, like, I think it's part of next steps, that we get this, and then the follow-up,
Yeah.
and then the.
continue, right. So that's my last question is, what is the biggest challenge of fundraising you want to address in the training? But then I also realized just now that, I have this on the back, and this should probably be a separate sheet. So I can, you know, if you don't want to give up the back of this. But so this is what's gonna happen. A couple weeks, I'm gonna come back and we're gonna do fundraising. So some of the stuff we talked about is a really great entree into this, which is why we're stacking these, right? Governance and then fundraising, because we need to have that alignment and that embodiment before we can ask and receive what we want and need. So next step is that in December, and then after that, after the holiday and the New Year, then we're going to have some continued coaching. So the glory and the beauty of this is that we get to hang together and really work on some of this stuff, right? So the idea is and today is about a breakthrough, asking you the questions to stimulate your thinking, so you know, hey, here's what we want to come back with, here's what we really want to have help with, so that we can create that, I can focus the continued coaching around what you all really want to work on. Does that make sense? Okay.
Could you explain what the coaching's gonna look like?
What's the next one in December?
6th, 5th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 5th, 6th. Which one is
I think it's 5th, 6th.
5th, 6th. Thursday, Friday again. Thursday night, Friday morning.
Okay, I just didn't hear it.
So the continued coaching. Let me see if I can remember. Okay. So we have three things. One is continued training. So we can have. What do we want to talk about, like different issues in governance? Like some that came through tonight was orientation. So we can have somebody come in, or I can come, and so we're gonna have continued training. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is check-ins. So of all the things we committed to, hey, we're gonna check in, how's everybody doing? You know, that accountability to create that transformational change. And then the third is just a one-on-one thing. So you can sign up for what office hours type of thing, where you get 30-minute block and you can jump in with whatever you want to talk about. And so we would have times, you know, specific windows of time you would just book to talk about that. So the continued training is really like, okay, what's coming out of here today that we want to know more about that would be really beneficial to us, and I can find, if I don't know it, I will find people who know it, and I'd be happy, you know, friends and colleagues would be happy to jump in and, you know, give us 45 minutes of their time to help you. And so for me, it's, you know, what do you want from that continued coaching? And you don't have to decide this today, because we're going to do the fundraising thing, but I'm just planting it in the seed that I'm just here, the point of this is to give you some content and stimulate your thinking, and so that we understand what outcome do you want, so one of the last question is, what outcome do you want to achieve by the end of this training in May? So how do you want your organizations to look differently than it is now? And so let's go on this journey together, and I support you, we'll all support each other, so at the end of May, I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna have like a party, and I'm gonna be like, man, look at all this that we got done, look at all the transformation that we changed. Because what I really want is for you to get to here. Now, I don't know if we can do that in 6 months, but I'm gonna tell you, like, this is the sticky part, and so we have a lot of ideas, like, we could do this, we could do this, we could do that. Okay, So we can start putting those ideas into action and then feeling our way through and being supportive to each other as we move through the process. So by the May, then we can look back and see, okay, here's how we started in January, look where we are now. Now we have promised that we really can change. You know, workshops are great, one-day retreats are great, and they, you know, then people say, wow, we did a whole retreat and nothing really changed. Well, you did a whole retreat because you had a breakthrough, transformation. I can't go to work out one time and be fit, right? I have to keep going back. So we're gonna work on that transformation together. And one of the things that we need to work on though is like, cause so many people didn't have microphones on their phone, and I like to do the Zoom thing, so by the next training, we're gonna figure out our technology so we can do the group coaching. Individual coaching we can work with however, but group coaching on a conference call is really hard because like it's all, no one knows when to speak and when to stop speaking, so the visuals really help. So, does that
So
help?
do you want us to take the last 10 minutes to fill this out?
You know, yes, is that okay? Because I just realized
Or you
that
just want us to discuss now, you wanna make a chart like the biggest challenge?
I would love for you, while it's fresh in your mind, to fill that out.
And then you could just take pictures of them.
You're amazing. Could you just take 5 minutes? You don't have to take 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Don't think too much. Just fill it out, and I'll take a picture of it.